Hello and salam sejahtera everyone. My name is Partibaraaj Nagasundram from the Faculty of Psychology and Education, University Malaysia Sabah. And today, I will be presenting my paper with the title The Role of Gender on ESL Learners' Perception in English Language Learning, a Systematic Review. I will go through 5 sections today: Introduction, Methodology, Results, Discussion, and Conclusion. So please bear with me. Starting off with the introduction, gender is defined as the attitudes, feelings, and behaviors of a person in society that is associated with their biological sex, which implies the psychological, behavioral, social, and cultural aspects of being male or female. How can language learning be affected by gender? Probably due to reasons such as natural biological differences, societal norms, and cultural norms. This in turn has an effect on learners' perception. Therefore, gender can be a factor which influences a person's perception due to the socio-cultural norms which shapes their attitudes, behaviors, or beliefs. Some previous studies support that learners' gender influences their perception towards language learning, while there are others which contradicts those findings. Past research on English language learning have established various socio-cultural and demographic factors that influence ESL learners' perceptions and attitudes. But there is a knowledge gap regarding gender and its role on ESL learners' perceptions in the English language learning context. To the best of the author's knowledge, there were no systematic literature reviews that have been carried out on this topic. Therefore, this systematic review was conducted with the objective of finding out whether gender plays a significant role in shaping ESL learners' perceptions towards English language. The research question of this paper is: does gender play a significant role in shaping ESL learners' perceptions towards English language learning? The study will review recent literatures that have been published to extract findings that are relevant to the study to answer the research question, therefore providing us a clearer picture on this matter. We'll go on to the methodology. The method that was used for this review is the systematic literature review to identify related studies using a keyword search procedure. The main keywords for this keyword search procedure are gender, student perception, learner perception, ESL, and English language learning. So once these keywords have been identified, a database search was carried out on ProQuest, Scopus, and a manual search on Google Scholar. So once this search was carried out, a screening process was then done using inclusion and exclusion criteria. This table shows the inclusion criteria that were used in the systematic review. There are 4 inclusion criteria: keywords, type, year, and language. The keywords were mentioned earlier, and the type of the articles have to be peer-reviewed journals with full text from the past 5 years, which is 2016 to 2021, and must be published in the English language. We began with 602 articles, and after the screening process using the inclusion criteria, we were left with 41. Now we have the exclusion criteria of the systematic review. The 2 exclusion criteria are area of study and empirical evidence, and due to non-relevance to the topic and gender not explicitly discussed, 31 articles were removed, and thus 10 study articles were kept to extract relevant findings. Next, we will move on to the results section. To clarify, a positive, mixed, or negative outcome of the findings relates to whether the researchers of these studies found that gender influences ESL learners' perceptions or not. Relevant findings of the review that were extracted from these 10 literatures will be presented further in the discussion section to keep it concise and clear. The first article is by Robinson, Basco, Matthews, Denzel, Princina, and Kiver in 2017 that was carried out in South Korea. The title was ESL Students' Perceptions of VLE Effectiveness at a University in South Korea. This article had a positive outcome. Next, we have Pakinathan and Kepol 2018 from Malaysia with the title Perceived Teachers' Self-Disclosure and Writing Performance and Gender of Malaysian ESL Undergraduates that had a mixed outcome. Next, we have Mohtasham and Farnia in 2017 from Iran with the title English Speaking Anxiety, a study of the effect of gender on Iranian EFL University students' perceptions that had a positive outcome. The fourth is Ben Salim in 2018 from Saudi Arabia. The title is The Foreign Language Anxiety of EFL Students, examining the effect of self-efficacy, self-perceived proficiency, and socio-biographical variables. This study had a negative outcome. The sixth paper is by Mayo Torres and Erickson in 2019 from the Philippines with the title English Learning Motivation and Self-Efficacy of Filipino Senior High School Students. This paper had a negative outcome. And then we have Idrus and Saleh in 2017 from Malaysia with the paper Perceived Self-Efficacy of Malaysian ESL Engineering and Technology Students on Their Speaking Ability and its Pedagogical Implications. This study found a positive outcome. Next, we have Khatun, Abidin, Mirza, and Hussein in 2020 from Pakistan. The title is Blogging in ESL Class, Gender-Based Attitude of the Engineering Students. This study had a negative outcome. Next, we have Nami 2020 from Iran with the title Educational Smartphone Apps for Language Learning in Higher Education, Student Choices and Perceptions, which had a negative outcome. Following that, we have Al-Shuaibi and Shukri in 2017 from Saudi Arabia with the title Foundation Year Students' Perception of Using Social Network Sites for Learning English in the Saudi Context. This study had a positive outcome. And last but not least, we have Abul Hassan and Hamid in 2021 from Saudi Arabia with the title Perception and Interest of English Language Learners (ELL) towards Collaborative Teaching, Evaluation towards Group Activities. This paper had a mixed outcome. We will move on to the discussion. All in all, there were 4 papers that had positive outcomes. Mohtasham and Farnia and Al-Shuaibi and Shukri, both in 2017, found that female learners had more negative perceptions compared to male learners. This was because females were less confident and more anxious compared to males. Robinson et al. In 2017 found that female students were less accepting of blackboard usage in ESL. This was because females perceived it as limited and needs improvements, whereas males perceived it as helpful and advantageous in ESL. Also, similarly, Idrus and Saleh in 2017 found that female students were more confident and positive than males when learning English. In terms of mixed outcome, Abul Hassan and Hamid in 2021 stated that males were more interested in collaborative teaching techniques in ESL than females. However, there were no difference in perception about group activities. Also, Pakinathan and Kepol in 2018 found that female learners had more positive perceptions than males overall, but in terms of amount and relevance, there were no difference in perception. However, Pakinathan and Kepol also stated that both genders perceived teaching strategies differently because females were more open and accepting than males. On the other hand, there were 4 papers that had negative outcomes. Nami in 2020 stated that students' own familiarity with ESL applications affect their perceptions, but not gender. Khatun et al. 2020 found that both genders are equally interested in using blogs to learn English, even though there is a gender bias in Pakistani society towards women education. Similarly, Ben Salim in 2018 found that there were no significant difference in perceptions, but female learners experienced more anxiety. This was probably due to gender roles in male-dominated society in Saudi Arabia. Lastly, Torres and Erickson found that no difference in perceptions and attitudes between male and female learners. This was because syllabus and medium used to teach English is the same for each student regardless of gender. In terms of sample, only 2 studies were conducted in the high school setting. Torres and Erickson reported a negative outcome, while Abul Hassan and Hamid reported mixed but more positive outcome. So this tells us that it is still unclear if gender truly plays a role in ESL learners' perceptions among high school students. Now we will talk about the implications that we can gather from this systematic literature review. Overall, male and female ESL learners differ in their perceptions and preferences of learning English. ESL teachers and educators should take into account their students' learning styles, attitudes, and inclinations with respect to their gender. Policymakers and education planners should come up with better English language curriculums and syllabuses which can accommodate students' differences and help motivate them to learn English in a safe and supportive environment regardless of their gender. Also, teachers should encourage students to form mixed gender groups to let students break down gender stereotypes themselves. These social interactions between males and females can encourage equity and respect among students in the ESL classroom. This can also avoid favoritism by teachers who stereotype students' behaviors and interests according to their genders. In terms of the local context, Malaysian education setting can improve on current practices by integrating better learning environments with respect to their learners' genders to suit their needs. This can help empower the Malaysian female ESL learners while supporting the male ESL learners to provide equal opportunity to develop and grow. This, in the long run, can produce more female and male graduates with a strong grasp on English language, boosting employability and marketability in the local or international workforce. The limitations of this review are studies were excluded from this systematic literature review because gender was not explicitly discussed. At the time of writing, newer articles and studies have been published that were not included in this review. Lastly, the lack of research in this Malaysian context on this topic. Therefore, a gap is present to compare findings with different countries and locally to account for cultural differences which could help assist future studies. For the future agenda, it is recommended that future researchers measure actual learning outcomes of English language learning in the context of gender differences instead of learners' perceptions only. Also, we should extend the study to ESL educators and instructors to see how students' genders can affect English teaching process, because there might be an issue of student stereotyping based on gender by teachers that may have an effect on ESL learners' perceptions towards English learning. Lastly, we should conduct more studies in the secondary school settings or at any level of the education. So now we have reached the conclusion. In a nutshell, gender plays a significant role on shaping ESL learners' perceptions towards English language learning. Society and environment is a big factor based on gender roles in said society. Also, the intrinsic differences between genders like male self-confidence and female receptiveness plays a big part as well. I hope this study provides valuable insight for the future of English teaching and learning moving forward. That is all from me. Thank you for your time and attention. Stay safe and be healthy. Thank you once again.